Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here with me late in the afternoon, in the middle of the week. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the time to get to explain to all of you about design sprints and how TPMA does them just a little bit differently to customize them to the needs of our clients. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to walk you through kind of a brief overview of what design sprints are and kind of the history behind them, and then focus primarily on how we do them here at TPMA and what they look like for our clients and what kind of deliverable our clients can expect at the end. So once I'm finished kind of walking you through what design sprints are and how we do them here at TPMA, I'll open the floor up to any questions you all might have. So just a brief overview for me, in case any of you don't know who I am. My name is Nyoka Clark, and I am a senior consultant here at Thomas P. Miller and Associates, otherwise known as TPMA. We are a consulting firm that's based in Indianapolis, Indiana, but our consultants work all across the nation, and we support clients all across the nation. So some brief background about me. Prior to my work here at TPMA, I worked in K-12 education and adult education for quite a long time. So I was a high school English teacher for several years. And then in 2010, I moved to Indianapolis to start working with the Excel Center, which was a charter school for adult students, one of the very first in the nation. So I worked at the Excel Center for about 10 years and lived in this really interesting world where K-12 education and adult education meet. And so really learned a lot about facilitation, a lot about how adults learn and process information, how they visualize information, how working with adults is very different in a lot of ways from working with children. And so able to kind of use a lot of the skills and the knowledge that I built through that experience to develop my facilitation skills that I use here at TPMA. So part of this process here at TPMA, we've been doing facilitation and strategic thinking, strategic planning, et cetera, for clients since the late 80s. So for quite a while. And earlier this year, we had a staff member at TPMA named Julie, who started bringing up the idea of design sprints and kind of explained what design sprints were. Is this something that maybe we could start using with our clients? So kind of going in a little bit of a different direction than what we had traditionally been doing with strategic thinking and strategic planning. And I, of course, was instantly on board. Yes, this sounds amazing. Absolutely. Let's do this. So lots of conversations with Julie, lots of conversations with other team members, and we really started building out design sprints at TPMA. And me being the nerd that I am, started doing lots of research, reading lots of articles, getting books, watching YouTube videos, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, really started to get kind of a complete understanding of what design sprints are and starting to get a better understanding of design thinking. So through the process of this, I found an online course on design sprint facilitation. And just a few weeks ago, was actually became a certified design sprint facilitator. So what I'm going to walk you through today is kind of an amalgamation of everything that I have learned over the last several months doing design sprints for my clients, as well as what I've learned kind of through my research and through my certification process as a facilitator. So next, I want to kind of walk you through the history of design sprints and kind of give you the background of them, if you will. So you'll see here on your screen, there's a picture of two gentlemen. The one behind the book, making the goofy face, is Jake Knapp. And Jake worked for Google back in the early 2000s and was really frustrated with how long it was taking to get from an idea of a product to making the product and getting it out in front of users. This is a process that would take up to a year, maybe longer in a lot of cases. And he was really frustrated about that. So started working at Google with various people to see how they could bring that process down and make it a lot faster. And through that work, the design sprint, as we use them here at TPA, was born. So he went on then to work for Google Ventures, which worked specifically with startups and helped run design sprints for those startups to help them really kind of figure out their product, test their product, get real-time feedback, and improve their product before it rolled out to general audiences. And after all of his work at Google Ventures doing these design sprints, he then wrote a book called Sprint: Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days, and kind of published to the world the idea and the process behind the design sprint. There's an international consulting firm called AJ & Smart that heard about the book, read the book, loved it, instantly started implementing it with their clients. Through a whole series of implementation and working with clients, was able to take what Jake Knapp had built as a 5-day sprint and pull it down into 4 days. So AJ & Smart does a 4-day design sprint, and their company is a really big believer on sharing information. So if you go to workshopper.com, there are a variety of blog posts there around design sprints and design thinking. So they do a really great job of providing specific examples. There's lots of videos to watch, some really great information. And AJ & Smart is the company through which I became a certified design sprint facilitator. So a lot of the work we do here at TPMA kind of centers on the 4-day design sprint developed by AJ & Smart. So what is it? What is a design sprint? So you'll see here in the gray box is the definition that Jake Knapp has for design sprints, which is a step-by-step process for answering crucial questions through a collection of greatest hits from business strategy, innovation, behavior science, design thinking, adult learning theory, and more. So essentially taking all of the research, all of the science around how adults learn, how adults process information, and building out a series of activities with all of that science in mind. So the cool graphic you see there is from the book, and it gives you a really brief overview of what this full 5-day design sprint process was when it was developed by Jake Knapp. So the first day you kind of map things out and get an idea of where you want to go. Then you sketch things out, kind of figure out what you want things to look like. You pick your very favorite one. You build out an actual prototype. Then you test it in front of real users to get feedback. So design sprints have been used all over the world with really, really big, massive companies. So Salesforce, Netflix, Google, IBM, Lego, and a whole bunch of others are really bought in to the design sprint process and use them constantly for their product development. So it shows you kind of, this is a very tried and true process. It's rooted in science. It's rooted in best practice. It has been used for decades now, all across the world by a whole variety of companies. So it's a very successful process. The challenge for us here at TPMA, however, is that a lot of the clients we serve, most of the clients we serve, in fact, don't develop products. They don't make things to sell to customers. Most of our clients are in workforce or in government or nonprofits. They work closely with their communities. They work closely with their stakeholders, etc. So it was a big challenge for us at TPMA. We know design sprints work. We know they're tried and true. We know they're based in science. But the way that they're set up won't work for the people we serve. So we had to go about and kind of figure out how can we take the design sprint process and change it so it works for the clients we serve. And so what we've done over the last several months is throughout all of that research, reading the books, watching the videos when I took the class, reaching out to other people who do design sprints, etc., we're able to start to really slowly peel the layers back of the design sprint and all of the different activities. So mapping, for example, mapping is a huge part of design sprints, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. But why? Why does mapping work? why is it such an integral part of a design sprint? What is it about mapping that makes it so important to this work? So it was identifying those things. So looking at all of the activities in a design sprint and really kind of diving down into its core of why it works, why it's successful. And through that process, we were able to get down to those really integral pieces of a design sprint and then put it back together in a way where it would really meet what our clients need. So through that process, here at TPMA, we've developed design sprints that take 1 or 2 days, depending on what our clients need. They're very much founded in the traditional design sprint process, very much founded in the research and the science that makes design sprints work. They just function a little differently because our clients aren't developing products necessarily. Now, I say that, side note, if you do develop products and you do want to test a new product in front of users and you want to do it in a week, we can absolutely do that too. So hit me up after this webinar. What I'm going to walk you through, though, is what we kind of typically standardly do with our clients when it comes to design sprints. So what you see here is kind of our traditional design sprint schedule. So when a client calls us up and says, hey, we would love to hire you to run a design sprint for us, this is what that work looks like typically. So in general, a design sprint, from the time we first meet with the client to figure out what it is that they want to the time the final deliverable is in their hands, it generally takes about 4 to 5 weeks. So that's one really great thing about a design sprint is it's fast. It's not called sprint for nothing. So instead of a multi-month project, this is something that can happen very, very quickly for clients, which is really great. So the schedule that you see here on your screen is broken up into 3 main components. So we have our pre-sprint process, which usually happens about 2 or 3 weeks before the sprint date. During that time, we've got 2 meetings with our clients. The first meeting is where our client spends most of the time talking. We want to spend that meeting understanding your organization, understanding your needs, your team, the challenge that is presented to you, why you want to do a design sprint, and really understanding what you need the end product to be. So what do you want to walk away with at the end of the design sprint? That way we can kind of plan backwards from there. At our second planning meeting, which usually takes place right before the design sprint happens, that's where I spend most of the time talking. So I walk you through the agenda. I walk you through all of the activities in detail because I do not want you to walk into that room not knowing what to expect. I want you to know absolutely everything that's going to happen. When we walk you through that agenda and those activities, we also use that time to make any revisions necessary. So one of the big things we pride ourselves on with our design sprints is being able to customize them to exactly what you and your team need. It's not an out-of-the-box solution by any means. Every single design sprint looks different because it's tailored exactly to what the customer needs. So that second planning meeting is key to make sure that we can do any revisions necessary to make sure that our design sprint fits exactly what you want it to look like. Then we come to the day of the design sprint. So typically here at TPMA, we do design sprints 1 or 2 ways. We can either do them in a 1-day session, which tends to be the most popular. And that 1-day session generally lasts between 4 and 6 hours. That time difference really depends on your team. It depends on your need and what you need to get out of the design sprint at the end. Our ideal situation, however, is to do a 2-day design sprint, so 4 hours each day. There's a very natural break in a design sprint, which I'll go over here in a moment, where it's really nice to be able to take that break, have everyone go home, rest, relax, reflect, and then come back the next day to get back to work. So 2 days is ideal. 1 day works perfectly fine. And we are absolutely happy to do this in 1 day. Once the sprint is over, We then get to work on the deliverable. So the deliverable for a design sprint is generally a summary report. That report is going to have everything. So during the sprint, our facilitators are walking around, they're taking pictures of the sticky notes, they're taking pictures of the group, etc., and they build all of those pictures into the final report. So the report you receive at the end is a summary of everything. It's going to include every sticky note that was written. It's going to include every conversation that was had as a full group. It's going to include all of the pictures. So you have like actual visual evidence of what you all did. And at the end, the most important part is going to be the summary, the clean, detailed version of what you all ended with at the end of the sprint. Typically, that's an action plan for most of our clients, but it doesn't have to be. And then we usually go and ask our clients to do a to do a reflection meeting with us afterwards. So to go over the deliverable with them, make sure everything looks good, make sure we've captured everything that they want. And also, we love to take that time to get feedback from them as well. What did you really love about the design sprint? What do you think we could do differently? What would you suggest we change, etc.? And those meetings are really important to us because they help us continue to grow and refine our design sprints. Now, as I mentioned before, every single thing or every single design sprint that we do is customized to the needs of our client. It is not in any way whatsoever an out of the box package. We want to make sure every activity we build, the agenda we create, is unique to you and your needs. Now, that being said, there are 4 core principles of a design sprint that are in every single one that we do. No matter the activities, no matter how we've designed it for you, these 4 core principles are found in every single sprint. So the first one is together alone. And it's usually one of the most surprising ones for individuals when they participate. A lot of what the design sprint is people working individually together in the same room. And we do that for a variety of reasons, which I'll go over here in a moment. But we don't do in a design sprint, we don't do breakout sessions. We don't do small group activities. We don't do team activities. None of that happens in a sprint. Instead, everyone works individually at parts, and then we bring it all together. And we work individually, and we bring it all together. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, typically, because it's different than what most facilitations and workshops feel like. But you get used to it pretty quickly, especially once you start to see how everything comes together. The next one is that tangible is greater than discussion. The way that a design sprint is set up, it is active and it is constantly engaging. Every second of the sprint, unless we're on a break, requires active participation from every single participant. And the reason for that is it makes it very, very difficult for the team to veer off and decide conversations that sometimes tend to happen. Or sometimes when you have a large group discussion, you tend to go down rabbit holes in different roads. And so the design sprint is set up to kind of prevent that from happening. And instead of focusing on kind of lofty ideas, going down the what if route, a design sprint activities are designed to make sure you're focusing on the tangible. What can you actually do? What can you actually build? What are the actual action steps you need to take? So focusing more on the tangible than group discussion. The next one is my favorite. It's the one that I say constantly during a design sprint as a reminder to my teams. Getting started is more important than being right. We need lots and lots of ideas. We need lots and lots of questions during a design sprint. That's the only way that they work. And if you focus too much on being very careful about what you're writing on your sticky notes, being very careful about what you're choosing with your dots, nothing's going to get done. We have everything timed out to a T. So it's more important to just get started, just get something on the paper. I always say during a sprint, quality or quantity is better than quantity at several points. Just put as many ideas down as you can. The sprint itself is designed to refine everything. You don't have to refine it yourself. The design sprint is going to do that naturally. And then the last one is don't rely on creativity. So during a design sprint, we ask our participants to draw, like actually draw things. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It activates a lot of ways to process information. It's rooted in best practice research. The design sprint brings in a variety of modalities of learning to make sure that we're really getting to where we need to go. But when we ask our participants to draw, sometimes they get really, really hung up on it. They want to make sure everything looks absolutely beautiful and perfect before they hang it on the wall. Don't do that. We don't have time. So don't rely on creativity. Just get your ideas out there. Your ideas are the most important thing. So these are our core principles that are built into every single sprint that we do. Now, that being said, let's get into why you all are really here. I know you've probably been checking the time. Like, is she ever going to tell us what a design sprint actually is? Yes, I am. Here I am. So I'm going to walk you through what is a very standard, typical design sprint. Again, we customize these for each of our clients. So what I'm going to walk you through is kind of our base standard for design sprints. Understand that when we work with a client, we customize this base as much as needed. But I wanted to walk you through kind of what those base activities are. So there are 4 major components to a design sprint. 1, we define the challenge. You come into a design sprint understanding what your overall problem is or the opportunity you're looking to take or a new idea you're looking to implement. So we usually have kind of a big idea of what to focus on. But we spend the first part of a design sprint really defining that challenge. From there, we start producing a whole variety of possible solutions. Then from there, we build out a storyboard, and then we take that storyboard and we build out the full action plan. Now, I say action plan because that's typically what our clients want to have at the end of a design sprint, but it doesn't have to be an action plan. Whatever that end product is something that we always decide with the client prior to the sprint. But for the sake of just giving you kind of a base overview of a sprint, I'm going to go ahead and focus on the action plan. So let's jump in. Defining the challenge. So for each of these, you're going to see pictures from actual design sprints that we have facilitated. So you see here, we've got a map that we ended up doing on a window in the room because we were running out of space. Because in a design sprint, we use every single inch of a room. So defining the challenge, there are a whole variety of activities that come with this. First, what we always start out with is hearing directly from the team. Now, we do customize these design sprints. It looks different for every client. However, I usually insist that no matter what, we start with this because it's really important to hear directly from the team. 1, it gives a really great overview and background of the situation. You all know it better than anybody else. You know it better than me, for sure. So hearing that directly from you is always really important. Also, hearing directly from the team gives you a chance to celebrate yourselves. So often we get really focused on the problem or the challenge or the barrier that we forget to take a step back and talk about how awesome our team is and the really fantastic things that we've managed to accomplish. So I always want to make sure that we start with that. So give some nice background, give some nice foundation, and then take the time to celebrate everything that's gone really well. There, then we work on setting a goal for we call it a goal, but it's not a strategic goal. It's more like a vision. So a vision essentially for the work for the rest of the sprint. And that goal, that vision then becomes really important. It becomes kind of our guiding light for the rest of the activities. From there, we move on to identifying potential challenges and barriers. So really focusing on, okay, so we've got this beautiful goal, this beautiful vision for the work we want to talk about during the design sprint. But let's take a moment and talk about anything that might possibly put up a roadblock on our way there. And it's really important to have that conversation because as we're building out the action plan, as we're talking about potential solutions, we have to know what those barriers are so we can build that into any action plan. So it's important that we take those steps. From there, we do the mapping activity, which you see the picture of here on your screen. So this activity generally is a way for us to start to understand how stakeholders are involved in this work. Stakeholders are typically what we do with this activity, but it can be done for a variety of things. Sometimes we focus on goals and we map out like the specific goals, especially if there's already a strategic plan in place, we can map out to that. So this is one way that we can really customize a design sprint. But a lot of our clients like to stick with stakeholders because it's really important to the work that they do. So at the end of all of this, we've really defined the challenge. We've come together as a team and we've really figured out exactly what it is we need to focus on for the rest of the sprint. And from there, we move on to producing solutions. So first, we usually take some time to research best practices. Instead of me bringing them to you, I have you all do it yourselves during the sprint. And the reason for that is I have a general idea walking into the sprint of what you want to focus on. But because we define the challenge in the sprint, I can't bring best practices with me already. So having you all do it is a really important part of the sprint. So it's just taking time to go through and researching what is out there, what is happening, what is cool, what are you intrigued by, and kind of presenting that out to the rest of your team. From there, we get into my favorite part of the sprint, which is the sketching and the sketching potential solutions. And it's the part always where people look at me like I'm crazy, like you want me to actually draw, like draw. Yes, I do. And it's one of those where everyone really hesitates at first because there's just a lot of hangups around that. I usually get a lot of, I'm not a drawer. I can't draw. I can't even draw stick figures. Usually I get lots of comments like that as people are kind of working through it. But once they really get into it, the sketches that they produce are really fantastic. And this is such an important part of a design sprint because being able to really visualize things before you jump in and start building out action steps is essential. It's a really incredibly important part of the process. And what you see here on the screen is just one example of what a sketch looked like from a design sprint that we did. So once we have all of these sketches done, sometimes we go through and we list out components that everyone really likes. Sometimes we pick one that we want to build out into a more of an action plan. It just kind of depends on what you want the end product to be. And from there, then after we've kind of produced a whole variety of solutions and talked about them, we move on to the storyboard. So storyboarding is where we go through and we have all of the participants identify core components that they feel need to be included in the action plan or whatever our end product is going to be. So we have them do a whole variety of activities for this. Everyone presents out what they decide or what they think is best, and then we pick one to go with. And the winning one, what we do is we put each core component that was identified into one of these large sticky notes that you see here. You know, facilitators, we love our sticky notes. And then we have participants go all around the room and find things that we've done all throughout the day or the course of 2 days that fit in to one of these core components. And they put it directly onto the sticky note. So that's what you guys are seeing here in this picture. So the one that's in the top left corner with like the massive amounts of sticky notes and papers and everything on it, that core component was funding, which I'm sure comes as a shock to everyone. So what happened was they identified that funding was definitely a needed to be a core component of their action plan. And then they went around the room and all of the other activities that we had done that day, anything that was related to funding, anything that was about funding, they literally, like physically grabbed that sticky note, grabbed that paper, grabbed whatever it was, and put it onto this other sticky note. So at the end of that activity, we've taken all of the pieces of everything we've talked about through the sprint, and we've seen how they all relate to what we've already identified as the core components. From there, then we move into the final part of the design sprint. What usually takes the most time is the creating of the actual action plan. So we take each of these sticky notes here and we pull them off the wall and we build out a very specific plan with concrete action steps based on everything that's on there. So for this one, the top left corner, for example, we know that that one's about funding. Well, what about funding? What do we mean? Are we going after funding? Are we going after funders? So kind of build that in, figure out what exactly it is we're talking about here. And then we use all of these Post-it notes, all of these papers to figure out what our action steps need to be. So essentially taking everything that we've talked about today, all of the different puzzle pieces, and putting it together for the action plan. And that's what we end up with typically at the end of the day, at the end of the sprint. So most of our clients want that action plan. They want those very specific steps, the very concrete and clear path. Doesn't have to be an action plan though. There can be a whole variety of things that we end up with at the end of the sprint. So it all depends on the client and their needs. And that is how a design sprint typically works. So we talked earlier about the 4 components that are involved in every single design sprint. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about the key features. So what makes a design sprint unique? What makes it something that you really want to make sure that your team is spending time on? Like what makes it worth the time and the money? So first, as I've mentioned several times, and honestly, I can't mention it enough, a design sprint at TPMA is customized to your team's specific needs. Every single sprint looks different because we want it to look and feel like exactly what you need. We want to make sure that we understand what your end goal is and that every activity we build leads up to that end goal. Because the next key feature of a design sprint is intentionality. So we build intentional activities that stack and build to that end product. With a design sprint, you give me 4 hours, I'm going to take every single second of that 4 hours. 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, it doesn't matter. As much time as you give me, I'm going to use every single second of it because I'm building out very intentional activities for you and your team. Another really unique thing about a design sprint, and one of the reasons that I really, really enjoy doing these, is that a design sprint has an equal promotion of all voices and ideas. If you've ever facilitated a large meeting, if you've ever participated in a large meeting, generally you get about 2 to 3 dominant voices in that meeting or in that workshop. 2 or 3 individuals that participate constantly, answer every single question, volunteer for everything. If you put them in small groups, these are the individuals that are going to grab the Sharpie, right, and start taking notes. They're the ones that are going to volunteer to present out, etc. I say that knowing full well I am also one of those people. So what happens though in those cases is when you get to the end of the workshop, your end product tends to just be a summary of those dominant voices, which is not what you want. That's not the goal. So the great thing about a design sprint is it eliminates that possibility. There are no dominant voices in a design sprint. And it's made that way very, very intentionally. So every single person in the room is required to participate actively. Every single person, all of their ideas, their questions, their solutions, everything is held equally to everyone else, which means the product you end up at the end, the action plan you end up with at the end, is truly an amalgamation of all of the ideas and all of the voices of all of the people in the room. And that is one really cool, unique thing about a design sprint. Next, a design sprint requires quick decision making. There is no time to sit and talk for an hour about which solution to choose. So the way that we design these activities means we force the teams to make quick decisions. We don't give them a choice. It has to happen. But what's really great, because all of the voices are held equally, everyone is equally heard throughout the process, it makes it so those quick decisions happen naturally. There is no room to kind of argue and hem and haw, because we've intentionally designed it so everyone has a say and everyone is heard equally before those decisions are made. So it works really well because we're able to make those really, really quick decisions. And the last key feature of a design sprint is it requires the active participation of all participations, because I made a typo there. Sorry, everyone. But the way that it's designed is because it has that equal promotion of all voices, every single person in that room has to participate. There is no downtime at all. There is no downtime to sit and play on your phone while someone else has a whole monologue going for 5 minutes. A design sprint eliminates all of that. Every single person, every single second of the sprint is actively engaged in the activities. And that is what makes a design sprint so special and so rewarding, because everyone in the room is heard. Everyone in the room, all of their ideas are held equally. You make quick decisions. And before you know it, you're walking away with a very clear action plan or whatever your end goal was. Oh, that is a design sprint. That's kind of how it works. Again, I really just want to reiterate that design sprints are customizable. Every design sprint looks different for each of our clients, but the 4 activities that I walked you through are the main components of a design sprint. So as we're putting it together for a client, we're going to pick and pull from all of those different activities to make sure it meets everyone's needs. So my contact information is up there on the screen. So I'm going to open up the floor to any questions you all might have. I believe you might be able to use the chat if you're not able to. So does anyone have any questions about design sprints? Ben, I see you raised your hand. I don't know if let's see. Okay. Ben,
I know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think the chat's disabled, but one of my questions was, can you do a design sprint remote?
Yes, you absolutely can. Thank you, Ben. We prefer to have them in person just because of how active and engaging they are. However, I've done several design sprints remotely and they still work incredibly effectively. So yes, we can absolutely do them remotely. And then in the chat, I see someone ask, what are some of the pre-work activities that you have clients do? Generally, I don't have clients do any kind of pre-work activity unless it's something really major where after talking to the client, we realize that there is some background research that needs to be done. But for the most part, no, there's no pre-work activity to be done, which is one thing clients really like about the design sprints. What are some other deliverables other than action plans? So I've done deliverables around a communication plan for a client. We've done a deliverable where our client wanted to build out a very clear process for something. Another one wanted to do kind of like big pie in the sky goals. So like if we got an unlimited amount of resources, what could we possibly be able to do for it? So those are just some of the other non-action planning type deliverables that I've done. For group size, generally we like to have less than 10 people participate in a sprint just to make sure it doesn't get really overwhelming. However, we can do a design sprint really for any group of people. I would say less than 5, however, that gets a little bit rough. At times we can still do it. We would just have to change things a little bit on that. So 10 or like 5 to 10 is a really good number. Does TPMA generally come alongside clients after the design sprint? Sometimes yes, depending on the work, especially if it's work, especially if the plan that they created is something that fits very well into what our firm offers. And we always love to. We always keep that door open that yes, we want to come with you and help you implement this work. And then what are some examples of agencies or organizations that have done design sprints? So I've done design sprints for community colleges. I've done them for workforce boards. I've done them for government agencies. I've done them for-profit businesses. I've done them for chambers. Those are all of the ones that I can think of right now. Honestly, any type of organization could benefit from a design sprint. Does TPA offer any kind of training to teach others how to do design sprints for their own teams? I would, at the moment, no, but I would absolutely love to maybe pursue that in the future. I would say the Jake Knapp book, Sprint, is a fantastic resource if you're interested to learn a little bit more about this. And workshopper.com has a really, really great blog post that can give you some more information and some more activities that you can try out with your own team. So those would be really great places to start. Any other questions? What have you learned since starting the design sprint process? So many things. One of the things that I really learned was that it's okay to adapt. Just about every single design sprint I've done, I've had to adapt and pivot in some way. Just about reading the room and feeling out the energy of the participants and knowing, oh, okay, we really got to pivot here. We need to spend more time with this and being able to kind of adjust those things on the fly. So the more I do these activities, the more I build out my toolbox, which makes it easier for me to pivot when needed. I've also learned that people really, really don't like the sketching process when it starts, but they really love it at the end. And so I just kind of have to gently guide them through until they all finally get on board. Any other questions? Okay, well, my name is Nyoka Clark here at TPMA. You can find me really easily on LinkedIn because I am the only Nyoka Clark on LinkedIn. I looked for that yesterday just to confirm. So if you type in my name, I am the only person that's going to pop up. So I'm really easy to find. If you would like to learn more about the design sprint process, if you want to just chat a little bit about the activities, or If you want to try one on for your own team, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to answer any questions that you all have further about design sprints. So thank you all so much for being with me this afternoon. Thank you for listening to me talk about design sprints. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And it's really, really great to see how effective these truly are with each of my clients. So thank you all for spending the afternoon with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.